Picture this, October 16, 1946, 2:45 a.m. In a converted gymnasium in Nuremberg prison, a man who once commanded armies is about to meet his maker in the most horrific way imaginable. What happened in those final moments would shock even seasoned executioners and haunt witnesses for decades. This is the brutal story of how Alfred Jodl paid the ultimate price for his crimes against humanity. But before we dive into those chilling final moments that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about post-war justice, I need you to do something right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell for Shadow Imperium, because what I'm about to reveal goes so deep into the darkest corners of history that most channels would never dare touch it. We're talking about eyewitness accounts, classified documents, and testimonies that were buried for decades. If you're ready to uncover the truth that history books refuse to tell, then you're in the right place. Trust me, after watching this, you'll never look at justice the same way again. Now, let's dive in. Alfred Jodl wasn't just another Nazi officer. He was Hitler's military mastermind, the cold, calculating genius behind some of the most devastating operations in human history. Born on May 10, 1890 in Würzburg, Germany, this seemingly ordinary man would rise through military ranks to become one of the most feared names in the German High Command. What made Jodl truly terrifying wasn't his battlefield prowess. It was his complete willingness to sign death warrants for millions. As Chief of Operations Staff of the German Armed Forces I Command, his signature appeared on document after document authorizing mass murder. The Commissar Order that condemned captured Soviet political officers to immediate execution, his signature. The Commando Order that sentenced captured Allied Special Forces to death without trial, also his handiwork. When Soviet prisoners of war were being massacred by the hundreds of thousands, Jodl's chilling response when confronted at trial was that the only prisoners shot were not those that could not walk, but those that did not want to walk. This wasn't military strategy. This was systematic extermination dressed up in legal language, and Jodl was its primary author. By 1941, Jodl had become Hitler's most trusted military advisor, translating the Führer's genocidal visions into concrete military orders. His office churned out directives that would make your blood run cold. Danish citizens, including Jews, were shipped to concentration camps on his written orders. Captured resistance fighters vanished without a trace under his night and fog decree. But perhaps most shocking was how methodical Jodl remained throughout it all. While other Nazi leaders ranted and raged, Jodl quietly processed paperwork that condemned entire populations to death. His diary entries discovered after the war revealed a man obsessed with military efficiency who saw human lives as mere statistics. His colleagues described him as brilliant, but ruthlessly efficient, a man who could order mass executions before lunch and return to strategic planning without missing a beat. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Document after document bore his signature, each one a death sentence for thousands. On October 7, 1941, he signed orders mandating the complete destruction of Moscow and Leningrad without regard for surrender, condemning millions of civilians to death. In Norway, his evacuation orders resulted in 30,000 homes being destroyed, leaving families homeless in the brutal Arctic winter. What truly set Jodl apart from other Nazi commanders was his strategic brilliance combined with complete moral bankruptcy. He didn't just follow Hitler's orders, he improved upon them, making them more efficient, more deadly, more comprehensive. When Hitler wanted to invade the Soviet Union, it was Jodl who crafted Operation Barbarossa into the largest military operation in human history. His planning wasn't just about military conquest, it was about systematic annihilation. The documents presented at Nuremberg showed that Jodl had meticulously planned not just the invasion of countries, but their complete destruction. Cities were to be razed, populations enslaved or murdered, entire cultures erased from existence. In one particularly damning piece of evidence, prosecutors showed that Jodl had been personally appointed by Hitler to coordinate with Alfred Rosenberg, the Nazi ideologist responsible for planning the exploitation
of Eastern European territories. This wasn't just military planning, this was genocide planning. And Jodl was at the center of it all. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, it was actually Jodl himself who signed the initial surrender document in Reims, France on May 7th. The irony was cruel. The man who had orchestrated so much death was now signing away his own nation's existence. But the Soviets weren't satisfied with the ram ceremony. They demanded a second signing in Berlin, wanting the supreme military commanders to personally acknowledge defeat. The Allies arrested Jodl on May 23, 1945, along with the rest of the Flensburg government, and he was transferred to Camp Ashcan before facing the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg. For months, prosecutors presented an avalanche of evidence, signed orders, documented meetings, recorded conversations, diary entries, all proving Jodl's central role in Nazi war crimes. His defense was pathetic and predictable. He claimed he was just following orders, that he had no choice, that everything was Hitler's responsibility. But the prosecution had something devastating. Proof that Jodl hadn't just followed orders, he had actively shaped them, improved them, made them more efficient, more deadly. The Nuremberg trials lasted from November 20th, 1945 to October 1st, 1946, and the evidence presented against Jodl was staggering. Prosecutors showed footage of liberated concentration camps, read testimonies from survivors, and presented thousands of documents bearing Jodl's signature authorizing atrocities across occupied Europe. One of the damning moments came when prosecutors presented Jodl's own words from a speech he gave to military governors in November 1943. In it, he urged them to be vigorous and remorseless in compelling forced laborers from occupied countries to build Nazi coastal defenses. This wasn't the language of a reluctant follower. This was the voice of a true believer in Nazi ideology. The French judge Cardin Debra initially dissented on some charges, but even he couldn't deny the overwhelming evidence of Jodl's guilt. When confronted with evidence of his role in deporting Danish Jews to concentration camps, Jodl's weak denials crumbled under the weight of his own signature on the deportation orders. The man chosen to carry out these executions was Master Sergeant John Woods. And this is where our story takes a truly disturbing turn. Woods had no formal training as a hangman, no documented experience, yet he was entrusted with executing 10 of the most notorious war criminals in history. But here's what most people don't know. Woods was deliberately incompetent. Evidence suggests he intentionally botched the executions to make these Nazi leaders suffer as much as possible. He had already executed Germans at other prisons, and in case after case, his victims endured agonizingly slow deaths. Woods built 3 gallows in the prison gymnasium, painting them olive green and testing them the day before. But he made critical mistakes. The trapdoors were too small, the drops insufficient, the nooses improperly positioned. What should have been quick, merciful deaths became prolonged torture sessions. The Allied authorities either didn't know about Woods' methods or chose to look the other way. Justice was about to become revenge, and Jodl would pay the ultimate price. October 16, 1946 began at midnight with the first execution. The converted gymnasium was filled with witnesses, Allied officials, journalists, medical personnel, all there to witness this historic moment of justice. 3 black-painted scaffolds stood ready, surrounded by black curtains to hide the condemned men's final struggles from view. As other Nazi leaders were led to their deaths one by one throughout the night, witnesses could hear the sounds from behind those black curtains. The creaking ropes, the struggled breathing, the prolonged death throes. Woods' technique was becoming horrifyingly apparent. As each man fell through the trapdoor, they should have died instantly from a broken neck. Instead, the insufficient drop meant they slowly strangled to death, their bodies convulsing behind the curtain while witnesses listened to their final struggles. The atmosphere in the gymnasium grew increasingly tense as the night wore on. What was supposed to be swift justice was turning into something far more sinister. By the time Jodl's turn came at 2:38 a.m., witnesses described a man who had accepted his fate. Unlike some of the other condemned men who broke down or protested their innocence, Jodl maintained his military bearing right to the end. He had been found guilty on all 4 counts: conspiracy to commit crimes against peace, planning and waging aggressive war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Asked for his final words, he declared, "I salute you, my eternal Germany." There was no remorse, no apology to his victims, no acknowledgement of the millions who had died because of orders he had signed. Even facing death, Jodl remained unrepentant. But what happened next was pure horror. As Jodl dropped through the trapdoor, the deliberately small opening caused him to strike his head, opening wounds that began bleeding profusely. Worse, the insufficient drop meant his neck didn't break cleanly. Instead, he began the slow, agonizing process of strangulation that Woods had engineered for all his victims. Behind those black curtains, witnesses could hear Jodl's body convulsing as he fought for